Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman from the Azure Data team. Welcome to this Ask the Expert session where we'll be focusing on App Modernization and Migration from end to end using data migration tools and Azure SQL. Hopefully you've already seen this session, but if you have not, you can still go watch it after you attend this session. Now, before we get into asking our experts some questions, I have a few tips and tricks on how to get the most out of this session. You can use the chat to ask questions, but be aware that once you post a question and it's approved, it will be visible to all attendees. You can also upvote your questions using the thumbs up button or the like button, and experts will be answering your questions both verbally and on the chat. So we have lots of experts standing by to help you get the answers to all of your questions, so feel free to ask all of your questions, even if a SME is already answering a question. At the end, we have lots of resources that we're going to provide, and we'll even provide some resources in the announcements. Now, a few etiquette items. This session may be recorded, so just something to be aware of. And a way you can help our moderators is by not spamming or trolling or posting any inappropriate comments in the chat. And really, this is to help us create a respectful, friendly, fun, and inclusive experience for everyone. Now, with that being said, I'm going to introduce our experts. Now, among our experts, we have many, many years of Azure SQL experience. I think each of these experts has been at Microsoft almost 20 years, if not more than 20 years. So that's great news for you. You're definitely going to have the answers you need in this session. To introduce the experts, we have Mukesh, a Principal Group Software Engineering Manager. We have Raj, a Principal Program Manager. We have Ajay, a Principal Group Program Manager. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Raj to give you guys a summary of what happened in this session.
Thank you, Anna. I'm going to be summarizing the previous session. Mukesh talked about various Microsoft investments, tools, programs, and migration guide to streamline customer migrations to Azure SQL. He also spent time around migration project lifecycle and how Microsoft investments help you taking that migration journey. And I gave an end-to-end demo using database migration tools like Azure Migrate, DMA, and Azure Database Migration Service. And then we literally took a .NET application, which is running on the on-premises environment, and then we used these tools to migrate to Azure PaaS services. So with that, I'm going to be hand over back to Anna. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. So we have a lot of resources available to you. I'll leave this screen up and we'll also put it at the end of this session. We have even more resources than what's on this screen. So someone from our team is actually going to post those resources as an announcement in the Q&A panel so you can easily access them. Now, the next thing we're going to do is just open up the floor for Q&A. So I'm going to go over and check and see what we have. It looks like some of these questions have been answered, but I'm going to go ahead and ask them to see if you have any other feedback to add to them. So this first question is anonymous. It says, my SharePoint organization is moving from SharePoint 2013 to SharePoint Online. Well, maybe this isn't exactly something we can cover in our session, but is there any tips and tricks that you guys might have, maybe Raj, for planning this migration?
Sure, thanks so much. SharePoint is fully supported on the Azure SQL. There are multiple ways that you can really migrate the databases. You can use our Azure Database Migration Service to migrate your databases, but also you can really contact internally the Microsoft as well, like to really provide a minimal downtime migration experience to the SharePoint databases. Thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Raj. This next question is about database migration service. Julio says, is there some roadmap to migrate Oracle database to Azure SQL database using DMS? And that would be for you, Raj.
Yep, great question. So if the migrating from Oracle to Azure SQL has got two major steps, right? One is you need to really do the schema conversion, and then you do the database migration. So for both activities, you can continue to use our SQL Server Migration Assistant tool SSMA that really automates the schema conversion from Oracle to Azure SQL. And then the same tool can also help you to do the database migration as well. But if your database is pretty large and you really need any help, please feel to contact us. And Mukesh talked about some of the programs that we really offer to provide some kind of a white glove experience to unblock you the complex migration. So please feel free to contact us back on that front. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Mukesh, it might be interesting for our audience if you could give a recap of the programs that are available to help folks as they migrate to Azure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna. So from, as we talked about in the session, along with tools and services and the automation that we are bringing in various shapes and form, we do realize the need of experts to be available in your migration and modernization journey. And especially when it comes to complete data platform modernization to SQL and Azure Data Platform, it becomes even more important because then we are talking two different technologies altogether, right? On source side as well as on target side. That's where most of these programs and engineering white glove teams come in picture. For example, Fast Track for Azure, it's a publicly available service that you can request. Same goes for Azure Migrate program, where you can raise a request to get Microsoft experts engaged in engineering capacity, in PM capacity, and depending on what kind of customers we are dealing with, there is a commercial help as well. And then under the hood, different product teams have different customer success engineering team. Like SQL has SQL Ninja. Our Synapse team has Synapse Customer Success Engineering. You will get access to these teams through some front-ending programs like Fast Track and AMP. That would be my suggestion at this point. Back to you, Anna.
Thanks, Mukesh. This next question comes from Anonymous, and I think this will be a question for Raj, but the question is, what permissions will I need to ask and explain from the Azure administrator in order to use the Azure Database Migration Assistant? Should this only be done by the Azure Tenant Administrator?
Yeah, so we always strive to support our tools for the migrations with very minimal permissions that are possible, least privileged permissions that are possible, so that you don't really run into these permissions issues there. For the DMA, depending on whether you're doing an assessment or migration, if you're really doing a migration, you need to have a member of the sysadmin privileges to be on the source environment, and also the DB manager on the target when you're migrating to SQL DB. And we are really looking for ways to really minimize some of these permissions, but because that we are also enabled migrating the logins, that's where we really need the member of the sysadmin privileges. Over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Raj. This next question is also probably for you, Raj. It says, can I use the Azure Database Migration Service to do an online migration? And does that involve log shipping?
Yes, you can certainly use the Azure Database Migration Service to do the online migrations to really minimize your migration downtime during your production migration cutovers. As a matter of fact, that is the whole intent of providing this service to give you the minimal downtime migration experience. So depending on the source and target pair that you are migrating to, if you are migrating to Azure SQL VMs, or if you are really migrating to a managed instance, yes, we use the log shipping kind of a method where we use the full backups at first, and then we are going to be using the subsequent log backups to synchronize the source and target pairs, the ongoing transactions and everything. Whereas if you are really migrating to SQL DB, then we really use the logical way of migration in terms of replication and as well as the CDC technologies. It all depends on the specific source and target pairs that you're migrating to. But yes, DMS really help you to do the migrations with minimal downtime. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. This next question I think is going to be for Mukesh. It's from Walter. Walter says, we migrated a backend database from Microsoft Access into Azure SQL. I require a password every time we attach to it. Is there any way around this?
This is kind of troubleshooting type of question. It can happen due to many reasons. I think we will take this offline if that's okay. There is a DMS feedback where you can send us a quick email and we'll respond to this with a couple options.
Awesome. Thanks, Mukesh. And just to clarify, is that email dmsfeedback@microsoft.com?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. We'll also have a moderator put that in the response. Okay, so this next question I think will also be for you as well, Mukesh. It says, how do I know the best migration strategy?
Again, this is a bit subjective. Migration strategy depends on multiple factors, right? Primarily being what source are you dealing with? And then do you know your target, right? If you know your target, then I would suggest that you go and look at a publicly facing engineering managed portal called database migration.microsoft.com. This points to our traditional Microsoft Azure Docs document and recommendations, where you can select a source, you can select a target that you know, right? And this website can take you through various steps, starting from all the assets that are available for this specific source and target, and then what do you need to be aware of during pre-migration, during migration, and post-migration, right? If you don't know your target, right, then we would suggest that you start with some of the decision tree that we have posted on a Microsoft Docs site. It's also available on database-migration.microsoft.com. That will help you giving, depending on source and some of the functional and technical and non-functional characteristic, what would be your best target, right? So that's your that should help you with getting started and making a strategy throughout the migration phase. Back to you, Anna.
Awesome. Thanks, Mukesh. Does this datamigration.microsoft.com website you were talking about earlier, does it have the capability to also guide you from Microsoft Access to Azure SQL? Because we have gotten a follow-up question from Dan about how to do that.
No, it does not cover MS Access, best of my knowledge, as source.
I can answer this question. So you can use our SQL Server Migration Assistant tool, SSMA, which is showing on the screen, to really migrate the databases from MS Access to Azure SQL. As a matter of fact, if I really look at our telemetry, the MS Access as a source migrating to Azure SQL is the second highest scenario that the customers are really using that tool, SSMA, after Oracle, actually. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj and Mukesh. Okay, let's see. This next question, I think Mukesh might have kind of touched on it. I think this will be the good question for Ajay. It says, Azure SQL has several targets. How do I pick the right target?
Question, Anna, if you flip to the other slide, it's a good reference for having this conversation. So it basically starts with two simple questions, right? What level of control the customer wants, and what are the capabilities that you're looking for in the target? So in most cases, if you want to manage your own environment with full control of everything from the OS level up, whether it comes to the version, patching, upgrades, backup, HADR, etc., then VM is your best destination, because Microsoft provides the infrastructure, but you just bring your workload and manage it the way you want it. Plus, you do get additional benefits for running SQL on Azure VM, such as Azure Hybrid benefit. You also get a free HA replica and a free DR replica, so that's almost 3 for the price of 1, and gives you some automation capabilities if you register the resource provider. However, if you do not want to incur the operational expenses of managing the environment and just want to focus on your business and applications, you can pick one of the managed service offerings. The first one is, if you need the full feature surface area of SQL Server for your applications, then managed instance is the right destination, because here you get not only near full compatibility with SQL Server, You also have isolation for both network and security, and you can run features such as SQL agent, SSIS, CLR, cross-database transactions, to name a few. Finally, if you are building multi-tenant applications which just need database programming scope and you do not need all the instance level capabilities, you can just pick the database as a service option. So no matter which of these two options you pick, whether it's managed instance or Azure SQL single database or pools, they're built on the same Azure Service Fabric, so you get all the same PaaS capabilities for both, such as evergreen version, built-in HA, automatic backups, security updates, and let you also move your existing workloads using various migration tools and leverage features such as Azure Hybrid Benefits and Reserved Instance to save additional costs. Yep, that's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks, Ajay. Hopefully that helped answer your question. This is a question we get a lot, so I'm glad we were ready with that slide. I'm going to put it back on the resources. But we have lots of materials for you to learn more and decide, what to use when. Now, this next question is about permissions. It says, database migration service notes that it needs Azure subscription permissions for network interfaces, the ability to add services into Azure. There seems to be permissions in Azure that are above sysadmin rights in the database. I think this is going to be the best question for you, Raj. Raj, do you think you can take this question?
Sure. So basically, in the previous question, I kind of responded the specific permissions that you need on the source side, and then now I'm going to be briefly talking about the specific permissions that you need on the Azure portal, actually, on the Azure target, actually. So usually for doing the migrations, you just need a contributor access to the actual subscription. You don't need a subscription owner, but there are times where we might need a subscription owner briefly, like especially when you're creating the DMS service. It's a one-time activity. Once you create the service, you can use the same service to do all kind of migrations. But during the service creation, you might need the subscription owner. And as well as to create the resources, target resources like managed instance, SQL DB, you might need a little more higher privileges, but just actually doing the migrations, you just need a contributor access on the subscription where you are really provisioned the DMS service. Back to you, Anna.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. This next question I think will also be best for you, Raj. It says, how can I use the tools that you shared to automate migrations across my data estate?
Great question. So all the specific tools that we showed you in the demo, all those tools and services that will really come up with the REST APIs and as well as the PowerShell commandlets, that you can really use those commandlets and REST APIs to completely automate the migrations, starting from discovery, app dependencies, assessments, and all the way up to migrations and then database migration cutovers. You can fully automate that. And we have a number of customers that we really helped them to automate this whole process so that they can be able to migrate, their data estates. And we have customers who migrated 10,000 databases over a period of 3 months, migrating in terms of batches, that we completely automated those migrations for them using our tools. Not only that, a lot of the third-party partner tools are also kind of used our REST APIs to integrate into their migration tools as well. So all those tools and great capabilities are available. And if you're really looking for an automation, please feel free to contact us with the email that Mukesh mentioned in the previous answer. Back to you, Anna.
Thanks, Raj. This next question is also for you and related to the tools. They say, how can I use the tools to determine what service tier or SKU I should migrate to?
Great question. I think Ajay talked about various deployment options are available in the Azure SQL and when to use what briefly. But one thing that you could also do that if you really don't know which target that you really want to migrate, one thing that you can do an assessment using our tools at like a DMA tool that really assess your existing databases and then look at the compatibility aspects, look at your availability requirements, look at your performance, and really determines the best Azure deployment option that you can really migrate to. And also it provides the size recommendations as well in terms of which SKU can really meet your needs and all that stuff. So we have tools that are available. But more importantly, I think what is really drives what specific target that you want to migrate is mainly the characteristics of your workload, whether it is a relation database, data warehousing kind of a workload, so the mostly that determines, but you can also use our tools to get that information as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. This next question is also for you, Raj. Lots of questions for you today. This next question says, when do I use Azure Migrate?
Great question. So Azure Migrate is a fully managed service that really help you to do the entire discovery of your data estate or the data center discovery. And then not only discovers the various infrastructure assets that you have, it also helps you to find out the application dependencies. That is a very critical step in the migrations, because you really want to understand for a given workload which of the servers that you want to migrate together. You don't want to end up with a scenario where you migrate some servers, some components to Azure, some still sitting in the on-premises. That's okay if it is by design, but otherwise you really want to understand which of those servers that you really want to migrate together, including databases and as well as the application servers and all that stuff. So Azure Migrate really help you to do the discovery, find out the assessment. It also gives you the readiness report onto the Azure, cost estimates when you migrate to the Azure. And also it enables the database assessments and also the application assessments and everything. Think about Azure Migrate is a single stop where it really meets all your migration needs and then provide a fully unified migration experience across your servers, databases, and as well as the applications. And we are really making a lot of investments further into Azure Migrate to make that entire experience seamless and end-to-end. Back to you, Anna.
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. This next question is for Ajay. Ajay, the question is, how do I know if serverless is a good fit for my application?
That's a good question. So serverless, as the name implies, is on-demand compute. So you're really looking for workloads which are intermittent in nature, unpredictable in nature, or if you don't need provisioned compute 24/7. So some of the customer scenarios where we see them using serverless are examples like dev test scenarios where you don't need the server running all the time. You only need it during business hours when you're doing your dev or test workloads. Or if you have applications which are seasonal in nature, for example, let's like an event app or a marketing campaign which runs once a year or twice a year during holiday season. Or even if you're running your regular business apps, but they run on a periodic, let's say end of quarter or end of month. So the advantage of serverless with Azure SQL is it's the same surface area of the other deployment options. So you have the full compatibility from an application perspective. But from the business side, huge savings because we do per second billing. So you only pay at the per second granularity. And it auto scales. You can specify a min and max compute, and the service will automatically scale depending on how much compute resource it requires to scale up or scale down if it doesn't need that. So you're only really paying for what you're using. And you can also configure what we call auto pause delay. And what that means is whatever time you specify, let's say 1 hour, if there is 1 hour of idle time, we will automatically pause the service. Stop the compute, take a backup of your database, and at that point, you're no longer billed anymore for the compute and only for the storage. And if your workload resumes, then we automatically restart the compute and bring the database online. So everything happens seamlessly with transparent nature without any manual intervention to stop and start the service. So these are some of the scenarios where you can take advantage of the serverless offering.
Awesome. Thanks, Ajay. I think that was really helpful. I know it was helpful for me. I'm sure it was helpful for some of our viewers as well. This next question is coming in from Anonymous. They say, and I think this would probably be a good question for Raj, but the question is Synapse a target destination for Azure database migration services?
Yeah, good question. We don't officially support Synapse as a target in the Azure database migration service, but the catch here is that some customers are already using it and migrating to Azure SQL DW target. But I think the real tool that that really help you to do this Synapse migration is the Azure Data Factory ADS that has a support for multiple sources and as well as the targets that you can really migrate to. ADF is not only a great ingression tool that supports multiple of these source and targets, but it is also a tool that can be used for the migration purposes as well. Wherever you don't really see a support for DMS, then it is the ADF is definitely something that you can fall back onto it.
Awesome, thanks, Raj. And this next question I think is for you as well, Raj. Before I ask this question, I want to remind everyone we are coming up in the last 5 minutes. So if you have a question, please go ahead and submit it so we can make sure we try to answer it before the end of the session. Okay, so Raj, this question is, how do I know if I can update my DB compat level?
Great question. So if you notice in my demo where I showed the DMA assessment results, not only that it provides you a compatibility report, it also provides you the feature recommendations. But if you come back to the compatibility assessment report that I showed you, it has multiple tabs. Each tab represents a compatibility level. For a lot of the people, compatibility level is really a database compatibility level at which it really helps you to support the source features and compatibility where it is coming from. So basically, it really makes your migration easy, even though you can really migrate to Azure SQL targets, but at the same time, you can keep your database at the same compat level where you're coming from, so that you can really minimize the number of changes that you need to make to your applications and as well as the to the schema. So you can use the DMA assessment and look at various different tabs. Each tab will tell you what type of issues that you really need to fix to get to that kind of a compat level. For example, if you're coming from a compat level 100, and if you really want to upgrade your database to a compat level of 150 or something, right? You can really use DMA assessment to look at the tab in the 150 compat level to find out what issues that you need to address. So DMA really help you on that front. Back to you, Anna.
Awesome, thanks, Raj. This next question that has just come in, let me pull it up, says, I have a very large database. It says here over 12 terabytes. How do I move that to Azure SQL Hyperscale? And I'm not sure who this is the right person to toss to. Maybe Ajay, is that something you can help with?
Yeah, so there are several factors which influence migrating large databases because it depends on the proximity of the on-prem location to Azure region. It depends on your network speed, and it also depends on different target tiers. And here you specifically as Hyperscale. So Hyperscale does not support native restores of full backups. So you will have to do data movement technologies. So we do have tools like Smart Bulk Copy, which we have on GitHub, which helps you parallelize and load data fast in more efficient methods. And we are also looking to how to speed the migration options for Hyperscale using our migration tools as well by parallelizing some of these efforts. I'll also let Raj answer if he has other ideas here.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for that, Ajay. I think when it comes to these large database migrations, we really categorize them as kind of a complex migrations. Depending on how much downtime that you can really take during these migrations, the best option is that please contact us for these large DB migrations. There are multiple options like Ajay mentioned, but if you really want to understand which method that really good fit for you in terms of meeting your downtime requirement and all that, and network requirements and all that, we can really help you to analyze your situation and then really provide and help there. So the white glove experience that Mukesh talked about, various programs, those are the right channels that you can contact us so that we can really help you from the engineering standpoint of view. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Raj, and thanks to all of our experts that helped us, whether it was on the video or on the chat. We really appreciate your help. As we close out, I'm going to pass it back to Raj to say any final words, but thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you so much for watching us and then learning about migrations. And we're really excited to see all these great questions that comes from you. Like I said, for any of these migration needs, and if you need help, please contact us. One easy way that you can contact us is dmsfeedback@microsoft.com, so that we can really route some of your questions to the right contacts within Microsoft itself. Happy migrations for you all.